run growth experiments? Well, you must. There's no other way. But it's really an art and a science. So Bruno is gonna walk us through how to actually set up growth experiments. How do you design and structure them? Then how do you launch them? And last but not least, how do you actually get the team on board so everybody feels accountable for the experiments that you're running? Another interesting talk here at AdWorld. I'm looking forward to your speech. The stage is yours, Bruno.
Hello everyone, super excited to be here and talk about the process, the art and science behind running growth experiments. Before we get started, let's just talk a little bit about me. I promise it won't be that long, not that interesting honestly. So my name is Bruno. I'm actually originally from Brazil, Rio, but I've been actually living in the United States for more than 8 years now. I currently work at Webflow, and for those who are not super familiar with what Webflow is a visual development platform that allows you to create professional websites without writing any line of code. And at Webflow, I work as a senior growth marketing manager, and with that, I lead a few efforts around conversion rate optimization, paid acquisition, organic growth, and demand generation. And yeah, that's me. My LinkedIn handle, you can see it there, Bruno Estrella. Feel free to add me. Happy to chat over there. But enough about me. Let's talk about growth experimentation, the process, and the science and art behind it. So here's what we're going to be talking a little bit more about today. Before we dive deep into it, I wanted to give a little background on experimentation and why it's something that people are talking about now and have been talking for the past couple of years, and why you should run experiments and what experiments actually do for us. We see a lot of people saying that you should experiment, but what do they actually do for our business, and where you should experiment, what areas of your product or of the journey you should experiment, how to structure them to generate learnings, and the process to get buy-in inside an organization to get people working on them and to ship them faster. So yeah, if you're not really excited about it, I guess that's what we're going to be talking about for the next 20 minutes. So first things first, experiments are not new. This is nothing new. This concept of running experiments in the business setting has been here for a while. And actually, if you go back to 1923, Claude Hopkins wrote about this in his book Scientific Advertising, that almost any question can be answered cheaply, quickly, and finally by a test campaign. And it's the best way to do it because you go straight to your customers. So as you can see this is almost 9 years ago, and the concept of running experiments in business has been here for a while, as you can see. But why are people talking about experiments more and more nowadays? And it's mostly because the accessibility to data and the ability to run experiments has increased a lot. It's much easier nowadays to set up a test campaign. It requires way less capital. The infrastructure to prepare for that campaign or for that experiment is much easier to implement. And right now it's much easier to measure properly. So as you can see, experiments have been here for a while, and the ability to implement them is much easier now. But okay, this sounds nice, little background, but why you should run experiments? That's the bigger question, right? And before we dive deep into like all the specific things about experimentation and stuff, I wanted to give like some sort of question that I didn't know about. I didn't know the answer, but do you know how many decisions the average human make in a day? Yeah, I didn't know too, but the average human makes 35,000 decisions in a day. And of course, this ranges from brushing your teeth to hitting the snooze button when the alarm goes on in the morning, to all the way to making serious investments in businesses, making serious changes to business models. And so yeah, the spectrum is pretty big. But when it comes to business related decisions, we are often very attached to our own ideas and to our own decisions. And we often say things like this: oh, this effort will have a major impact in our business. I'm sure this will increase signups. Or we often hear that from executives and other people in the company. But are they really? Are they really gonna do it, or do you have some sort of bias towards that decision because it's either yours, or because you've seen somewhere else, it's a new thing people are talking about? So the first thing that experiments do for us, and the reason why you should run them, is because experiments help us avoid human biases that will lead us to the wrong direction. For example, one very simple example here. Let's say in June, you had a new product launch. And if we look at this graph, we might say, wow, this product launch really worked. The people are adopting it, and it's really increasing our user base. So let's double down on it and keep investing resources into it because we know it works. But there are probably other folks inside the organization that weren't involved in this product launch that are looking at the same graph and having other interpretations. They're probably looking at this graph and saying, wow, this PR campaign I did performed really well, or these Facebook ads that we launched are really killing it. And people inside the product launch are saying, well, this product is really increasing adoption. Let's double down on it. So this leads us to the other benefit of running experiments. Experiments help us understand the isolated impact of our efforts. So with experiments, you're able to tell that this specific campaign or this specific change in our website or in our checkout flow increased the number of customers compared to a regular experience. So you can see, okay, this experiment that we launched is causing 2.5% increase in signups, is causing 3.5% increase in active users, and it's increasing our number of customers by 12%. And that's the right way to define what we should double down on. Not really looking into graphs and associating and correlating stuff based on things we did ad hoc. Okay, so we know that experiments have been here for a while. We know that today it's easier to launch experiments, and we know that experiments, one, help us avoid bias, and also help us understand the isolated impact of our current efforts, so we can double down on what's working and stop doing the things that aren't really working. Since we know all of that, how do we get started, and what areas should we start to implement experimentation? So, in my opinion, the easiest way to get started with experimentation is to first map the most common path that users take to become customers. So in your case, might be something like this. The user visited your website, they click on the CTA, to sign up. They eventually sign up after filling out a form. They activate on your product, so they do certain types of actions inside your product that tell you that they are activated, and then they become a paying customer. So by doing this quick analysis, very simple one, you can identify areas of opportunity to improve conversion rates. So let's say, for example, in this case here, we saw an opportunity to focus on this specific step where people click on the CTA and then sign up. We believe that we can increase that conversion rate since people already clicked on that button. They seem to have some sort of signal to sign up. So let's focus on this step of the funnel here. Okay, we identified this. And now it's actually my favorite area of experimentation. Actually, before collecting positive results, but these don't really happen as often. So my other favorite part of experimentation is around experiment structure. And I think the reason why it's my favorite is because it's something that I don't see a lot of people talking about, but it's definitely the most important part of running experiments. And it's also the biggest mistake I see whenever growth professionals and marketing professionals are running experiments. People don't structure them in the proper way, so the learnings that we get are not as clear as they should be. And in terms of experiment structure, there are 4 elements that you should go after, that you need to have in your experiment whenever setting up. So the first one is improvement area. The second one is evidence. The third one is assumptions, and the fourth one is prediction. So we'll go through each one of these and we'll start to give real life examples of how you should structure these experiments and how we've structured in the past. So for example here, since you kind of know where you want to run your experiment, we saw that there might be an opportunity from after people clicking the CTA and then signing up to your product. We need to identify what are we trying to solve in there and what are we trying to improve. So in this case, the improvement area and the problem we're trying to solve here is increase the number of people who sign up for our product after they click on the CTA. We believe we can do this because people that click on the CTA probably have a higher intent to sign up, and we can increase that conversion rate overall. After we identify this, we want to do that, but we need some sort of evidence that shows us that this is a worthwhile investment. And that's where you fill out the evidence piece. And in this area, you can collect qualitative data, you can collect quantitative, it can be prior experiments you ran, some observations that will back our overall experiment here. And one evidence for this case can be that 57% of users go back to our homepage and don't sign up after clicking on the CTA in the hero. Okay, so that's one evidence that we can. There are probably some things we can improve in there. After we collected this evidence, we want to create our assumptions, and these assumptions can be basically what we believe to be true, that can solve the or to make sure we improve in what we identified. In this case here, it can be that we believe that users get distracted with our current sign-up modal, since they can still see the website behind it after they click the sign-up button. So what we're saying here is that we believe there's some distraction in our sign-up modal here that are preventing people to sign up to our product. Now, since we identified already the area we want to focus on, we have some evidence to back us, we believe we know the reason why we're seeing this behavior, we want to make sure that we have our prediction. And this prediction is basically what will happen in case our assumption is correct. And in this case, what we came up with is if we remove the background from a low opacity black background to an all white one, we will see a larger number of people signing up because these users will focus on the right action we want them to do. Okay, this is looking structured right now. We have the problem we're trying to solve. We have the evidence that is backing our assumptions. We have the assumptions in place, and we have the prediction of what would happen here. So now that we know all of that, it's time to design it. And that's also like a super, super, super important part of experimentation, because we need to design with impact in mind. So the creative team and you as the PM, or you as the person leading the experimentation effort, you should work very closely with your creative team to make sure that we're taking all the experiment structure into consideration when designing the variants in here. So we need to design variants that isolate as many variables as possible. And that's when the kind of the R piece come in, where the creative team will establish the right user experience that at the same time provide something nice and also isolate the variants against our control group. And as you can see here on the slides, we worked with our creative team and we saw that one way that we could showcase what we had in the experiment structure is that if we remove the low opacity background to all white, people would focus more. So that was our minimum viable test to make sure that we were increasing sign-up conversion rate at that step of the funnel there. So, okay, this sounds nice. This sounds good, and I believe we now have a clear understanding on how we should structure experiments as an individual contributor. But how do you go ahead and get this done in a company setting where most of the time people will always will need to focus on other areas of the product. They probably have other responsibilities apart from just experimenting with growth efforts here. So here's the process I recommend that people should go through whenever running experiments. The first step, where I believe it's the most important one, is stakeholder alignment. You as the person leading this effort should be the one communicating with each and every single stakeholder that you envision will be part of this process to make sure that they understand the structure that you provided, why you're experimenting this, explain why you're running, the potential impact, and align on timeline and bandwidth to make sure that people understand that this will come, this initiative is coming. Share documents with them, an experiment doc, to make sure that they align with you. After like 1 or 2 weeks, where you talk to a bunch of people, they know that this is coming, it's time to work with individual pods. So work with your design team to align on what are you trying to accomplish, provide resources, set the boundaries for learnings. So we cannot change as many things. We need to make sure that the content stays the same. We're just changing what we want to validate, and let them come with the best user experience possible given these boundaries. After you worked with sprint, with the design team on a sprint, make sure the handoff to engineering, if you need engineering this experiment, is as smooth as possible. Make sure that you address any possible concerns. If there are any dependencies, make sure to address them too, and give as much context to engineers as possible to how this experiment should behave. At the same time, connect with your data team, if you have one in-house, to make sure all instrumentation is good, success metrics are looking good, the sample size is feasible, and to make sure we gather learnings quickly. And last but not least, go through a QA process If you don't have a QA team in your company, make sure you do this with your engineer or designer to make sure that this experiment is behaving correctly. And that's it. This is how you should structure experiments and make sure that they get shipped inside your company. So I wanted to give a quick rundown on key takeaways from this. First, experiments aren't new. They have been here for a while. They're just nowadays we see people talking more about it because the access to data is much easier now, and the ability to run these experiments is much easier. Experiments help us avoid making biased decisions. We know we get very attached to our own ideas, but we got to make sure that these experiments, these ideas prove to make an impact. And by doing that, we can see the isolated impact that experiments are bringing to our overall company and overall goal. Experiment structure, this foundation, is the foundation for clear learnings. We saw that during this exercise, as we were going through, it was very clear in our minds what this would look like. It's mostly because of the correct structure that we put in that experiment. Aligning your structure with design efforts is key to make sure that we have the correct variants in place, they are isolated, and we can understand the overall impact of that experiment as whenever we collect results. And last but not least, providing context for stakeholders when you're working on creating that experiment is key, and is something that not a lot of people talk about, but going through the process of providing context, providing the structure, aligning with each individual team, and then shipping the experiment is definitely something that professionals need to do if they want to have an experimentation framework in place. And that's it. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this quick session around growth experiments, and feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to chat, and yeah, hope you enjoy the conference.